Mackenzie.
Lamar.
Call me Snake. I'm going to do this whole episode the exact way that Kurt Russell does the first half hour of this film. He just whispers everything. It's like he's in Amelia Perez singing. Just talk whisper, the whole fucking thing.
Talk whisper. It's giving Clint Eastwood, which is what he was trying to do, to be fair.
I get it, but it's just so funny when like John Carpenter didn't make the decision to fix it in post, but when he's talking to the chief guy that's putting him on the mission at the beginning and they're going back and forth, the other guy is talking at a regular speaking voice and Kurt Russell's just talking down here like I don't care about anything. I don't give a shit about any of this. But anyway, before we get into all of that nonsense, I wanted to ask you, has there ever been, if they made a movie about Mackenzie's life called Escape from Blank, what city have you ever felt like you needed to get the fuck out of? Maybe like a bad trip or just didn't want to be there?
It's just a bad place that shouldn't exist. That I think a lot of people would agree, to be honest.
If you say New Jersey, I'm going to be real pissed.
I would never pick that fight. Okay. I would never pick that fight. I also love New Jersey, actually. So anyways,
thank you.
No, Odessa, fucking Texas.
Escape from Odessa.
Escape from Odessa. Not Odessa in Europe. Odessa, fucking Texas. It's just a shitty oil town. Like it's just a bunch of people there purely for work. Like there's nothing cultural or interesting about it. There's nothing beautiful about it. It's very brown, very deserty.
Isn't that
everything's pretty expensive?
Friday Night Lights,
weirdly,
wasn't that based on Odessa? Or was it? I don't know if that's where the actual story. I know it's based on a true story in a book. I don't know if that's where it took place, but I feel like the city, at least in the fictionalized versions, was loosely based around Odessa, even though they filmed it in Austin, because it's like former oil town. The fields are all dried up. It's just a football town.
Huh. Maybe. I actually never saw Friday Night Lights. So
either incarnation, like the TV series or the movie?
I saw the movie, but I don't remember where it was based or if it's the same story. But I never saw the series, which I think is the one you're talking about, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, in the series, it's Dillon. I can't remember what the city is in the movie because I've only seen the movie once.
But I mean, I think honestly, you could apply that to so many Texas towns, by the way. Like True. Texas small towns, football is the thing for sure. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure it's one of the few things there is to do in Odessa. But I used to have to go there a fair amount. My sister and her kiddos and my brother-in-law lived there briefly for, I want to say like a year and a half. So I was actually there a lot and it was pretty miserable every time. They also hated it. What about you?
I was trying to think of this even when I was coming up with the question. I don't know if there's ever been a specific city that I'm like, I do not want to fucking be here. I drove through Arkansas once and I just stopped and contemplated camping in the Ozarks. And I remember I was outside of my car for 10 minutes at most. I got it pulled over, took a picture of the Ozarks, the trees out there and whatnot on this scenic drive. Immediately started getting attacked by bugs bigger than any bugs I had ever seen in my life. It was humid and hot at the same time. I was like, I am not camping here. So for me, it was Escape from Arkansas. Just in general, it wasn't a city, I guess.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, the Ozarks are beautiful, but yes, it is. The bugs are no joke, man. The bugs are no joke. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lamar.
And we are continuing Action April with Escape from New York, our 80s entry. Full of all the 80s things.
I think this was my first time seeing this the whole way through. I saw bits and pieces when I was a kid, I feel like on cable and stuff like that, but never watched the whole thing. And I feel like spoiler alert, I might have waited too long to watch it. I'll say that right up front.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I was pretty young as well. I want to say it's definitely 20 years-ish, something like that. So it did feel a little bit like a first watch to me as well. So yeah, I remember, like to your point, I remember bits and I'm like, oh yeah. And there's just 80s like things that are fun about it. But yeah, it's definitely of the time.
Oh yeah,
maybe it's a good way to put it.
Absolutely 80s. Yeah.
All right, before we get all into that, what are we drinking?
Well, our drink, as always, is provided by at Craft World, and he got creative today. So We are doing 2 ounces of bourbon or rye, 0.75 ounces of lemon juice, 0.5 ounces of my favorite, Aperol, 0.5 ounces of simple syrup, and then you're going to need an egg white. So you can break the yolk away from I didn't know you could just use the shell. I was trying to find a thing on Amazon I could buy that would separate the egg white. Turns out you can just use the shell. Separate that sucker out.
If you're good at it, by the way. Spoiler alert, I went through 3 eggs to make this happen, y'all. Like, it just was not a good experience for me.
We were joking before the pod started. Mackenzie told me that, and I said the most expensive cocktail you've paid for in 2025 was at your own home. You used 3 fucking eggs.
My own home in this fucking economy. What a waste. What a waste.
Ruined. So anyway, you're going to get all that. And because Skylar knows how to take care of his boy, he did say I was allowed to throw a little bit of Chambord in there to offset the bitterness of the Aperol. So I did put in a 1/4 ounce to add a little more sweetness.
Did he text you that on the side? I feel like I missed that.
We got a thing. We got a thing going on.
Are you his side piece? Is that what I'm learning right now? You're the side piece?
We can talk about this after the episode, but that might be a bonus ep for you guys. So you're going to throw all of that into a shaker with no ice. That's important because when you're using egg whites, you get some bad byproducts, because I've made egg white drinks before and it gets a little like gross looking. You can still drink it, but if you put ice in there, it makes it worse. So dry shake it, put it into a coupe, and we are calling this Here Comes the Snake.
Yes, we are. What does yours look like? Let's see. Okay, they look the same. They look pretty close.
Yeah, they're like milky almost.
Yeah, I was getting a little worried about mine. I felt like I was doing it wrong. So I feel affirmed. All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, it was a whole thing, my cocktail making experience this time. I don't love when Craft World gets weird and doesn't make it for me. You know, not my favorite thing, but here we go.
That was the first time I had said the name because Skylar came up with that name, right? That was the first time I said it out loud. What does he mean by that? Because when I said, "Here comes the snake," I didn't want to say it.
You know, I think we'd have to ask him. Maybe that's the bonus ep, to be honest. I wanted to give him some creative freedom, this time. And we're going to talk about the snake in many forms later.
I was going to say, if Kurt Russell at any point had said that line out loud, like, "Here comes the snake," then I would get it. But I'm having second thoughts here.
I feel like it's built into the tattoo and some things. We'll get there, hopefully. Anyhow. Well, as we said, we're talking about Escape from New York, 1981. So again, of the time, it is very 81 of it all.
This is in the midst of what the Mad Max movies, and that's the vibes I got from this. I don't know about you, but I think 2 years before this was the first Mad Max, and then the same exact year as this, the Road Warrior came out, and then I think Thunderdome was shortly after that. But I got big time overlap vibes from those two.
Yeah, I agree. It's got this like 80s dystopian action like energy that does absolutely translate across these for sure. And I only saw the first Mad Max, to be fair, but yes, similar energy. Well, until they rebooted it, I will say. But yeah, it gives similar energy. Absolutely. It was pretty well received at the time. We've got a 86% from critics and 77% from audiences. So not bad. And then on IMDb, which I do like, it's been a while, so I feel like I feel like that's a more aggregate rating, potentially 7.1 out of 10. So pretty well received, actually, I think, kind of across the board.
Yeah, I think again, you gotta remember it came out in 81, so you guys know I'm not a huge action person, and like I do enjoy them, but it's one genre where it's evolved so much over the years, and now my expectations are so high when I see an action movie. So I'm in line with those ratings for the time.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of checks out. It would be interesting to deep dive into, like, again, when the ratings are coming in, how much they've been updated since, because I don't think this is something that a lot of people are watching right now for sure. But yeah, it has a sequel, Escape from LA, and there's much debate about which one is better. We actually just did an episode recording with the Prime Cut guys, and there was much debate in just that group alone. Have you seen Escape from LA?
I have not. All I know is that it came out, like 10 years after the original, something crazy like that. Like, it took a while to get made.
It took a while.
And I think the general consensus of the second one is, like, sillier, even though I feel like this one was pretty silly at times.
I think it was 15 years later, because I remember there was an interview with Kurt Russell about how he's still fit. He was proud about still fitting into his Escape from New York clothes 15 years later. And they ended up changing his wardrobe anyway.
I gotta go find my prom dress, see if that's true for me too.
I didn't watch it either, though. I'm a little bit of like, I'm kind of if I like the first movie with things, sometimes I don't see the second one. I think that's kind of what I was doing here for sure. But it is a John Carpenter movie. He did all the things for this one. Director, co-writer, music as well. All the
John
things.
Carpenter's favorite part of his job is just making the music for every single film that he does.
I'm just gonna do everything. I'm just gonna do everything. I love it. I mean, I think it looks, feels, sounds like him for a reason. You know what I mean? So he puts his stamp on it, which again, if you don't recall from prior episodes where we've talked about John Carpenter, Halloween, obviously. He wrote from The Fog as well. Yeah, I think he definitely wrote Halloween, but he also wrote The Fog. He wrote The Thing
Barbeau
too,
was
right?
in that one too. He did The Thing. Yeah. He did They Live, as well as the sequels They Laugh and They Love, to be released. But
coming
soon. They Laugh, and then in 2027 They Love.
Yeah, so he does the whole shebang. He did actually have a co-writer on this one as well. Nick Castle did the screenplay here, which he has quite an interesting range if you look at what he's done. He's known for... We
talked about him on the Hook episode.
Yeah. He also did, I don't know if I remember if I mentioned this on the Hook episode, but he did August Rush, which I really liked and is a very different type of story to a kid's action movie in Hook and Escape from LA and Escape from New York. And August Rush is a screenplay about this young prodigy musician type. And it's not at all actiony, and it's not even so much just a kid's movie. It's like this kid is like beyond his years. Very different writing style is all I'm saying. So interesting.
He had a significant influence on my childhood because he directed Major Payne and Dennis the Menace, which are two movies that I know have not aged well. But as a kid,
you're like, I'm not going to go back and rewatch it. I don't want to ruin that for me.
But then we mentioned this on our Hook episode, but I still think it's worth mentioning here because we're doing a John Carpenter. But Nick Castle played the original Michael Myers, like the shape Michael Myers.
Yeah. So this is very John Carpenter entry. We have a really awesome cast and crew here, led by Kurt Russell, which we are fans of here on the pod. And all these folks have done, a fair number of these folks have done a lot of movies. I just wanted to narrow it down to some of my favorites. In the case of Kurt Russell, he does a lot of great things. We did The Thing with Prime Cut. We've talked about him before. But I really love his turn in The Hateful Eight. I think that's I just love that movie.
That one too. And I'm glad we did because after rewatching and discussing it, I realized I liked it even more than I did the first time.
Yeah, it's so good. And also, I keep thinking about I got Prime Cut on the brain, but he was also in a bunch of the Furious movies, the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah, he's Mr. X or
Mr. Nobody.
Mr. Nobody.
Yeah.
I've seen each of those movies one time. Sorry, everybody. But I didn't write down my favorite Kurt Russells because I feel like we've talked about him before. We're going to talk about him again, so I'm not going to rehash every time. But I found this fun fact on him that he made his film debut in an Elvis movie called It Happened at the World's Fair. Then he ended up playing Elvis in the Elvis movie in 1979, not the shitty Tom Hanks one that came out a few years ago. And he also did Elvis's voice in Forrest Gump. So it's like all full circle for him. So good for you, Kurt.
I didn't know about the Forrest Gump one. That's funny. Yeah, Elvis is just following him around. That's interesting. What a good one. I also really like that this was his like breakout action role. Actually, I think that's worth noting here is like this is him trying to slough off his Disney kid image that he has had to date. Like he's in a lot of those Disney like teen movies in the 70s. And I sort of forget that about him because he very thoroughly sloughed off that reputation with this and some later films. But this was his like first go at doing a real action kind of move. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. We also have Lee Van Cleef here, who plays Hawk, who's been in a bunch of things, including a bunch of spaghetti westerns and things like that, which are really cool. He did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A bunch of stuff with like the John Waynes and the Clint Eastwoods of the world. So he's done a lot of great stuff. You probably recognize him. Have you seen anything that he'd been in? Because you're not like a big
I
Western
recognized
person.
his face probably from clips that I'd seen of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But like, no, I've never seen any of his films. I don't think.
Yeah, it's almost all westerns, and it's fun because he I don't know. I feel like he still just kind of gives that energy in this anyway. It's very similar. But yeah, he's a good one. And actually, fun fact, he was very injured during filming here. He had like hurt his back or his leg. I can't remember what it was, but he was really hurt. So all of his filming took place in one day. And he, in most scenes, is leaning on something, like holding something, because he's in so much pain and having a hard time standing. So he's like, in almost every shot, he's leaning on something. And there's this one scene where him and Kurt Russell are walking down the hallway, and he told John Carpenter that was the hardest thing for him to shoot, like to get through that one take of them just walking down a hallway. So he powered through for us.
Is he? He just not like acted like he wasn't hurt. I'm just saying.
Yeah, just suck it up, dude. What's the problem? I don't understand. Oh, yeah, so felt for him. We also have Ernest Borgnine, he plays Cabby. He has been in a bunch of stuff, and weirdly enough, I'm like scrolling through his IMDb, and I'm trying to remember the thing that I think of him for, and I cannot find it. But he is known. I remember
seeing him in the Poseidon Adventure. That was
right. He's known for Poseidon Adventure. Yes, that's a very popular one. A lot of people know him for that. I remember him in that, but it's just not what I am picturing. And I'm like,
is it Mermaid Man and SpongeBob? Is that where you're thinking of him? That's him.
So. No, it definitely wasn't, because I don't watch SpongeBob. I kind of hated SpongeBob. I was the weird kid. I mean, that's what I hear, but I don't know. I don't know about all that. But he's done a bunch of stuff, including Red was like some of his more recent stuff as well. But he's been on a lot of TV too. So maybe it's some TV show that I saw him on, to be honest. And then we also have Donald Pleasance, who is a British actor playing the president of the United States of America. And we have thoughts about that later. There's all kinds of like, they tried to potentially explain it, and then they chose to cut the scene where they explained it. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
I know, again, 1981 action movie. I didn't need any explanation. I'm just like, okay, president's British. Who gives a shit?
You're like, checks out, whatever.
I also like respect to him, because we all, I think most, maybe not you, because you watch so many films that are older than most of us watch, but like, he'd been acting since 1952. But all of us remember him for, Halloween and things. Like, he didn't have his breakout, what I would consider his breakout roles, until 25-ish years into his career. So that's just bonkers.
Yeah, and he was in bigger movies, but he wasn't the main character. He would, he did Great Escape, which was popular. He did You Only Live Twice. But yeah, if you look him up on IMDb, he's known for Halloween. And then I guess this as well, even though we'll get into his character and all the thoughts I have about him in a little bit. But those are kind of the main big guys. We've got a couple other characters that float around, including Isaac Hayes, who plays the Duke. He's actually not in it very long, to be honest, and the rest of them are
villain. Yeah,
for being a villain and like somebody there's just so much like build up to him, and you have him for like 2 seconds. But he did like Reindeer Games. He did Shaft.
He was in South Park as chef until he got angry because he's a Scientologist and they made fun of Scientology and he quit. Like, that's what got him to quit South Park, despite all the other things that
things about South Park.
He quit the show because of a Scientology joke, and then they did a whole episode where they killed off his character to like get back at him, and they made his death very graphic for a cartoon show.
Y'all, Scientology's a cult. That's why if you're gonna quit a show over Scientology, you're just affirming its cult status, bro. I'm just telling you, like, we all believe it. Yeah, wow, what a choice. We also have the last one I was gonna mention, unless you have others, was Adrienne Barbeau. She's known for all kinds of stuff, but she was actually either married or in a relationship, partnership, what have you, with John Carpenter at this time. But she does The Fog is what she's pretty well known for, as well as Halloween, is just a bunch of things that she has partnered with him on. Not always like a major role, but she was in a lot of films that he did for a long time.
Yeah, I think John Carpenter definitely, like every director, has the people that he prefers to work with, and there's so much overlap. You've already mentioned, I think, 3 of them. There's also Tom Atkins, who plays Hawk's like right-hand man. He ends up being in Halloween 3. And then you get Jamie Lee Curtis as the voice of the narrator at the beginning, obvious Halloween alum there. So there's a handful, like 5 or 6 people in this who work with Carpenter at least 2, if not 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, he's got his cast, his troupe of players, I would say, for sure. So yeah, those are all the ones I wanted to call out, but there's a lot of people in this. And so you spend a lot of time, it does take a lot to track them all, I will say, but there's a good amount of people in this that we didn't mention, so feel free to check it out. Very quick plot summary. Very quick. In 1997, when the US president crashes into Manhattan, now a giant maximum security prison, a convicted bank robber is sent in to rescue him. Which, if you just read that summary, you're like, how? Why? Like, why would you, of all the people like that you would pick,
I wrote
what
down
a choice.
That we waste no time. It reminded me of like an 80s arcade game, like when they would give you the story at the beginning when you're at the arcade, and it's just like, the president's been kidnapped by ninjas, you have to save him, go.
Yeah.
That's what this movie felt like. Within 10 minutes, it's like, president, here's the situation, we're sending in this guy to save him. That's the plot.
That is such a good call out, though, because this is absolutely giving 80s arcade game. Like the whole way through, by the way, and we'll talk more about it, but I have so many questions about random pieces that are used and some of the aesthetics and whatnot. But really quick before we get into that, you've either probably seen it or maybe you're not gonna see it, but just in case, turn around, don't drown. It's spoiler time. Yeah, let's talk about the flashing arcade lights that are in the background of Hawk's little like lair every time we see him. And they're literally like, like they're just going. They're not saying anything. They're not signing anything. There's nothing. There's no reason for these blinking lights that I can find. Did you see a pattern? I was he distracted me every time.
I think it reminds me of when you have to build in a motion picture, anytime there's a spaceship and you don't really know what a spaceship looks like on the inside, so you just design what you think a spaceship would look like. It's the same thing, I think, in this scenario. No one in here had ever been in a war room or any like security room, and they were just like, this feels right. All the little 8-bit screens and the crazy, like, some of that was kind of cool actually, but other stuff was definitely
some things were very cool. The wireframes of New York was actually very creatively produced. That was really cool. They couldn't afford the graphic images. Those were too expensive at that time. So they made a blackout model of New York and did these neon tapings to create the wireframe of New York. Like, that's so creative to me and really cool way to create this effect that even when I'm watching it and I know that that's there, it's not super obvious. It's a really cool practical effect. There were many times where there was something completely impractical that was very distracting to me. I was like, this makes no sense.
Totally agree.
But I mean, it was pretty well received. Couple quick production notes. Like we said, the ratings were pretty high, but also it made pretty solid bank. It was a $6 million budget and it made $50 million. So not bad, given the like truly shoestring budget to try and create.
I wonder what the budget was for the second one, because I read about some of the budget issues on this, and like they couldn't shoot obviously in New York City because that would have been way too expensive. I think they did 2 scenes on Liberty Island where the Statue of Liberty is, but the rest of it was St. Louis and miniatures that they built. But yeah, some of the stuff in this doesn't age great, but you can't really hold that against it for how cheap the budget is. Like $6 million sounds like a lot, but for an action movie set in New York City, that's not much.
That's really not much. But I mean, they made a great point though, because it's like they had to make Manhattan look like a dystopian, burned out city. So it's not like, oh, I just have to shoot in Manhattan and I'm done.
That's
right. I love that. Was my favorite factoid that I read about this whole thing, is that they literally had a location scout who was tasked with finding the shittiest city in America. That was literally what she was deputized to do. And she found not just St. Louis, East St. Louis. They were like, you know what's the worst? East St. Louis. It had been burned out a few years before because of a fire. So it was actually kind of set to really be a good setting, but there are places where it doesn't hold up well. There are places where it does not work. Like later with the Central Park of it all, I was like, I was like, that does not.
That and
not
like,
even...
I didn't love. First off, I want to say shout out. I have been to St. Louis one time. I actually did really enjoy my time there. I had heard there were parts of the city you didn't want to go to, but the 2 days I was there, I had a great time. Great city. Anyway, but I didn't love the miniatures, especially I think it's the first shot when the president's plane is flying into the city. The miniature design of New York, I didn't think that had aged very well, or like Snake's airplane looks kind of fake. But they did end up they liked that model of New York so much that they ended up using it in Blade Runner. They just repainted that model and use it in Blade Runner. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I agree, though. I don't think it held up well. And like some of this, we have to remind ourselves on rewatch that it's an 81 action movie, but there were so many effects there that I was like, this is so bad. Like the plane, the Air Force One shot of it, like flying into Manhattan and then crashing. And you're like, all that was just really bad. Like did not hold up well.
When Snake's plane lands on top of the building and he almost goes over the edge, that looks pretty rough too.
That looks pretty rough. And then when it falls later as well, and it's like, there were just some things like that just really don't. And I have to say too, like, I know it's 1981, but we did some crazy shit in Star Wars that holds up. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is a little bit reflective of the budget, I think, for sure. But I do think, fun fact about some of those effects and some of the things they were trying to do, James Cameron was a special effects artist on this film. Yes. He was also a DP part of this film as well, but he did some of the matte paintings that are supposed to represent edges of Central Park and some of the buildings behind Central Park. And so he worked on this film as just a special effects artist.
This is before he did Aliens, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Setting him up for success. Yeah.
This is very early on, but it's interesting how many things. I mean, we just think of him as like creating these behemoth, incredible films, and he was very in the weeds on the production side of things. So I thought that was really interesting. But also, can we talk about the Law and Order font really quick to open us up too? I was very like, am I watching Law and Order?
But
I immediately was like, oh, so I'm watching Law and Order. I don't remember that. I was waiting for the
noise too. Did I miss dun, dun?
I wanted it. I was like, this is what we're supposed to do, right? But
in the city of New York, there are presidents whose plane crashes, and there are the men sent to help them.
100%. It's literally what just happened. But no, okay, so real talk. Crime rate has risen 400%, which is fucking wild. But also, would we pick Manhattan to be the prison of the United States of America? I just really, if we were, I just want to take a step back. Like, this was the low-hanging fruit.
I feel like we would have picked St. Louis in 1981, apparently. You know?
But I was like trying to think of something else. I mean, it's an island, I guess, and we're not going to give them one of the good islands.
If you're saying, trying to add logic to an illogical film, if you're saying that crime had gone up 400%, and because we know New York does have a ton of crime as it stands today, like that's just big cities in general, right? So assuming that it gets that bad there, then yes, maybe after a decade, the people who were living honest lives in New York would have left. And it's just like, hey, it's easier for us to just put a boundary around this sucker.
Put a boundary around
bad people there, yeah.
It's kind of crazy though, if you think about like I will give the premise some credit. It is very much of its time. Like this is such an era of, again, like the Blade Runners of the world and like some of these dystopian Mad Max and all of that. But this particular premise is unique in how it isolates Manhattan and turns it into this maximum security prison. But I thought what was more interesting about that is that they're just left to their own fucking devices. Like nobody's in a cell. Nobody has any help. Like they're not feeding them. There's no shelter. There's go kill yourselves off is the impression that I get. And they have absolutely doubled down and are somehow surviving in this city that doesn't really like there's no agricultural presence. Like there's no economy that you can see, but there's literally just like gangs.
As you say all this, I'm checking all the boxes of, this is in Mad Max. This is in Mad Max. You're like, there's no agriculture. Somehow people are still eating cannibals. Yes. Like it's a wasteland. It's ungoverned. Yeah. Mad Max.
Yeah. It's just a formula. Like it's a formula that is, I guess, working at the time, but it just is weird to watch now. I feel like maybe I had a hard time at the start, like suspending my disbelief. I was just like, how does any of this work? Like this is not working.
It's weird.
But it's also 1997.
Say that. Yeah. They said it 16 years in the future. I wonder if anybody thought this was like a prophecy and got really scared, and like 1997 was going to be a pretty rough year.
Right. 1997 was going to be terrible. Never mind. It was like we were all in our bliss with, or at least us 90s babies.
This is such a side note tangent, but I ended up watching A Quiet Place day one, like 2 days after I watched this, and both of them are about a bunch of people trying to get off Manhattan, like it's Escape from New York again, but just in different circumstances. So anyway,
I haven't watched that one yet. Is it good? Sidebar.
I didn't want to watch it. I thought I was like, what more story do we have to tell?
The first one was really good, but I didn't.
Second one just felt like more of the same. It was fine. This one it's cool to see it happening in New York City. That's all I'll say. And they put an interesting spin on the story. It's not a 10 out of 10, but I was like, yeah, I was okay spending the time watching that. And there's some good performances. So.
Okay. Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. Well, back to this one. The movie that makes no logical sense whatsoever. So the high level is that obviously the president has landed on Manhattan Island because his plane was hijacked. And I don't know about you, but this was so eerie to watch because you see the plane flying towards Manhattan and toward the Twin Towers. And thank goodness in this film it does not do that, but it comes very close physically, so you're like, and I didn't remember if it did or didn't actually, and I was like, oh god, oh god, oh god. So it was like a very stressful couple seconds in this movie. But his plane has been hijacked, it's crashed into Manhattan, and he hides in this pod. And I just love this pod for it's such a little bitch move to me. Like the whole thing this guy is doing. He was just giving I said out loud to Skylar multiple times, I was like, he's such a little bitch. Like over and over. I just have no interest in this just stupid president.
Also, maybe we should have had at least one extra pod so somebody else could eject and protect him with a gun, maybe.
Yeah, Secret Service. I don't know, something, or make room in the pod for someone else. He doesn't even look like he fits. When it closes, I was like, did it crush him? Like it doesn't look like it even has room for him. But yeah, he just, gets sent off in this pod. And sure enough, as soon as he lands, to your point, nobody there to protect him. He immediately is president napped and held for ransom out of the gate. So that's how we get here. And enter Kurt Russell.
Talking very quietly. And I'll be honest, the beginning of this, as badass as Kurt Russell looks in his getup and his eye patch, which I guess was his idea. He just showed up the first day and was like, I think this will look cool. And John Carpenter was like, yeah, let's go. John Carpenter seems like a very open-minded director. He's not a purist about his art. He's just like, yeah, that sounds cool. I
think he's just trying to make cool movies. He's like, it'll be cool.
Yeah. He's like, cool. I'm doing the soundtrack. That's all I care about. I'm doing the score.
I care about. Exactly.
Who gives a shit what the movie is like? But the first 20 to 30 minutes of this were kind of a slog for me. Again, first time watching. If I'd seen it when I was a kid, I probably would have loved it. But it just takes so long. I don't care about it. He's playing such a middle school student of like, I don't give a shit about anybody. I don't know. Nothing matters to me. It's hitting on all those tropes that kind of grind my gears a little bit that we've talked about before. But for all I said about how quickly I feel like this moves at the start to establish the story, it takes a bit to actually fucking get interesting.
Yeah, I think you're triggered by your former students of it all. Because it was not giving to me at all middle school, like, brat kid who just thinks he's too cool for shit. Like I did not read that.
You remember when we did Wet Hot American Summer?
Yes.
Paul Rudd's character in that, how he's like,
yeah,
I don't care about anything. That's the vibe. Maybe I shouldn't have said middle schooler. It's giving me Paul Rudd and Wet Hot American Summer vibes.
It is. Well, also, I do actually wish that we got a little bit more of his story because to your point, it gives us 2 seconds of this thing happened. We're going to get this guy to go in and he's going to go rescue him. He also is former special forces, not just a bank robber who decided all of a sudden to rob a bank. It is now being transferred into this prison. And also like he was sentenced to life in prison for robbing a bank. There are so many gaps here. It's so dystopian, but I just wanted more information. Why is he robbing a bank? Are we still not taking care of our veterans? It seems like it. And it was a whole thing for me. I was like, I want more information from him. And we got nothing. It was just like, well, he's a badass special forces guy and he happens to be coming in today. So like, let's tap into him. It was so weird.
Yeah, I didn't even overthink that element of the plot. I was just like, yeah, he's the most badass guy in the prison. Let's go. You're making a lot of sense. Yeah.
I just wanted to know why he was so badass and then robbed a bank. I just wanted one more nugget. Like there could be a throwaway line of, like you lost all your money in a stock market crash. I don't know, something. But anyways, we're tapping him in. He's going to go rescue the president. And he, to your point, could not give less of a fuck of like, and he, even though they're offering him his freedom, you're right. He just like kind of doesn't care. He's kind of like, I mean, okay, maybe. Like he just seems not interested in that, which again, if you're thinking about this island, I'm sure this island is infamous. Like, wouldn't you not want to go there? And any opportunity to get the fuck out of there sounds super appealing. And yeah, he just doesn't seem to give a fuck.
He's just a badass because it's 1981 and
and
the movies needed people to be badasses. Yeah.
I just love the part too where you're right. He decided last minute, but then he had to like start taking it off more often between takes because it was fucking with his depth perception so bad. And I just have images of Kurt Russell like walking into shit between takes. Like,
I feel like I went as a pirate for Halloween more than 1 year, and I feel his pain because I feel like if you walking around, you would have to sort of lift it up to see where the fuck you were going.
Yeah, I accidentally stabbed my eye once, literally, and I had to wear an eye patch for a while it healed and do all these drops and all these things. And yeah, like it will fuck with you. Like it will mess with you. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he walked into some walls. So I don't know, makes me chuckle. But yeah, so they drop him in. You find out, of course, that they decide to up the ante by putting these explosives in his neck, and that if he doesn't come back in what started as 24 hours, 22 point whatever 49 hours by the time they actually get him going and put these things in there, then he's gonna explode.
It feels a little unfair. They should have started.
It feels so unfair
once he's out of the prison,
Yeah, I was just also like, the clock can't start now. That's some bullshit. And they just like rip him off of a whole hour. This is a really shitty deal, is what I'm saying. He didn't fight it at all. He like says one quick thing about it, but then he's like, oh, whatever. Like,
again, he doesn't care about anything, Mackenzie. If he had turned around and said,
hey,
I think it's a little bit unfair that I don't get the hour, like that would have probably, people wouldn't like Snake as much as they do.
Meanwhile, they would have exploded me because I would have sat there arguing about the hour for another hour. And they would have been like, you're wasting time, ma'am. Oh, but yeah, no, he just does not care. He does not care. Yeah, but his outfit is also something else. Like when he gets ready and he does, like, to your point of, I'm just the badass. He like has the leather jacket over his shoulder and he's got the camo pants and the boots and the eye patch. And you just like, he has this walk and this vibe. And then of course the voice. So yeah, I think 90% of this movie's appeal was like just Kurt Russell being cool.
Yeah, you're right. And I just, when we covered The Thing, and in that I feel like he's similar vibe, not the exact same, but at least in that he's got some depth to him, and he does seem to care, and he wants to protect the guys that he's working with at this facility. And in this, it's one thing for there to be no stakes. Like, I know Kurt Russell's character isn't going to die halfway through this movie. I understand how action movies work, but it's another thing when the main character doesn't actually seem to care about anything at all that's happening.
Anything that's happening.
I don't care if I die at all. Like, well, this isn't.
But again, that's where it's like, if you give me a little bit more of his backstory, maybe we'd understand why. Like, did he rob the bank out of desperation? Did he lose people? Did he, like, why does he give absolutely zero fucks, but then also doesn't want to explode? Like, it seems like the only thing he kind of cares about is, I would love to not explode. But he also doesn't seem super invested in that either. Like, if it happens, like, that wouldn't be great.
Happens. It's God's will. He's a religious man, but the Lord works in mysterious ways. I just honestly, if you have any like intriguing bullet points, but I wrote down, when we get to the drag show in post-apocalyptic area and Cabby joins the party, that's when the movie gets interesting to me, because the first half hour was such a fucking slog.
The half hour was a slog. He also like almost makes out with this rando who happened to in real life be his wife, but like there's no reason for that to have happened. He's just trucking around like doing the basics. There's just all kinds of inconsistencies too, where you're like, I don't understand why this is happening, why I'm watching this. When Cabby enters the scene, it's so funny because one, we have this huge island of criminals and somebody immediately recognizes him. Again, I want more information. Why does he know who he is? But he does.
That's,
And
if he was special forces, I feel like people should know. Isn't that kind of their
know
job?
that's
right?
what I'm saying. Like, isn't he supposed to be unknown? Like,
it's
but
vague just for the purpose of being vague. It is interesting though, because you mentioned that girl, you mentioned the people that are recognizing him. Every single person who says, I thought you were dead to Snake dies. And I've granted it's a small cast, and like most of these people are living in the apocalypse, so it makes sense. But interesting little factoid there.
It is a fun factoid, but it is, to your point, like, why do people know who he is and think that he's dead? Anyways, I just want more information. But Cabby is fun. Cabby's cute. I think he's like a good little character. Do you know who's not a good little character that I fucking really hate every time he's on the screen?
Brain?
Romero.
I like Romero. I think that dude,
him.
He's got 6 lines the whole movie, and he is full camp, all out silliness.
I mean, he commits.
Does the hisses. Yeah.
He commits. I'll give you that. I'm not here for it. I also, again, like, I just feel like I needed to have really absorbed this as a kid when I saw it, because I was just sitting there questioning. I was like, they have nail polish, and apparently they have hair mousse that will get your hair up a mile, and they have cars and crowns and weapons, and I haven't seen a single person eat an item of food. I just had like so many questions, and he was just so annoying. And he's like, he almost like his teeth look like kind of animalistic, and his hair is crazy. And yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to punch him in the face the whole time. But you're right. He commits to it. He commits to the energy.
I feel like when we covered Street Fighter, we both didn't love the experience, but it's like Raul Julia going 110% into his like, I am Bison, blah, blah, blah. I feel like this dude is just like, yeah, I'm a cannibal. I'm in this environment. I'm going to be fucking crazy. And I kind of like that a lot of the people in this are playing it like it's a straight, just like, yeah, this is the apocalypse and we're going to fucking kick your ass. And it's not within the realm of the universe. And I feel like Romero's guy just nails it, honestly, for how goofy it is.
And it is an homage to like horror. There's several characters who are named after like famous horror directors.
Said that. She was like, did they just say Cronenberg? And I missed it, but I heard she heard the last name Cronenberg, so that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I don't remember the others, but those are 2 of them. So he is kind of an homage to that as well. So that's a fun little reference. I did like the limo when it shows up. Like, I think when the Duke shows up in his little limo with the chandeliers and the like,
I was gonna ask you, one of my notes was, if you had to either drive the Duke's car for the rest of your life, it would still get from one place to another, but you had to keep the car exactly the same, or you had to get Snake's tattoo on your stomach. Which would you choose?
Drive the car.
Okay.
Drive the car.
I think 100%. That's the easier. Yeah. Because the Snake tattoo is pretty
horrible
shitty.
tattoo.
Yeah, it's
a horrible. I said it again. Another thing I said out loud multiple times over the course of the movie, where I just turned and I was like, "This is just a bad tattoo. Like, we could have made this cooler. It just didn't even need to be totally shaded in. Like, it could have just been something like a really cool, creepy looking snake, and it
reminded me of when I worked at Hot Topic and people would come in, like customers, and would be like, yeah, my friend did this for me for free in his basement. That's what Snake had. Yeah, my buddy started tattooing last month.
And you're like, I can tell. I can tell. Because he just filled it in. Also, audience, let us know what Lamar's current Hot Topic count is. I'm curious. Somebody out there is
also let us know if anybody out there would get the tattoo instead of driving that car with the chandeliers on it.
Which is your pick? Your pick's the car too?
I would probably, as somebody who values my tattoos, and I don't regret any of them, I would regret that one for the rest of my life.
That would be a regrettable tattoo. Hard agree. Yeah. It does feel like that whole limo energy feels very Grease to me. I don't know if that's like on the money, but as they were pulling in, I was like, this is just giving me Grease energy of the guys all pulling in with their cars. I would have loved a musical number. I think it would have made it better, actually. I think we could, talk about committing to the bit. Like, we're on an island. We have nothing better to do. Somebody wants to bust out in song. I was
hoping they would play, Stevie Wonder, Sir Duke. I thought that would at some point, like when they were rolling in, like that song starts playing.
That was going to come on and be the theme song. call Mr.
Missed
Carpenter. You
opportunity.
know, it was his idea. But to that end, the music is very interesting, and it's like it is very 80s for sure, but I don't know, it almost doesn't always feel like it fits. I will say there are like a few scenes where I'm like, oh, okay, but he has his kind of key, like high pitched, intense notes that he does here and there that you're like, again, sounds like John Carpenter for sure.
Yeah, sounds like a jump scare, but it's not a jump scare.
But it's not a jump scare. Like nothing's happened. That's what I mean. Like it didn't quite fit, but you heard it and you're like, okay, well there it
There's
is.
also
But
some stuff toward the back half when he's getting in fist fights with like the Duke's gang and stuff that's almost dancey. I don't know if I can put it any other way than that, but it's like,
yeah,
that's a terrible interpretation of it. But it's like very drum heavy, and it just feels like I should be like, yeah,
ready to do a jig, perhaps. Yeah, it does have some of that energy. I mean, and the whole movie just has a very specific aesthetic. I'll give it that. Like it commits to this look, and there is a slightly different look for the island versus external to the island. Like outside the island, you get kind of your very typical, like in the the police headquarters and some of that, you get this attempt to look futuristic, and it's just it's so the 80s version of what we think futuristic looks like, to your point of we don't know what the spaceship looks like, so this is what we're gonna make it look like, and it looks like an arcade to me for sure. But then the island itself is so isolated, and so it does just capture again like a very Mad Max look, and there's the piles of cars, and I'm like, how did that happen? Like, what equipment do you have to stack cars on top of each other? And they have the chase scene in the car later where he like busts through the wall of cars, and you're like, there's no evidence to suggest that would have worked. Like you have no way to know that you could have busted through that wall of cars without it toppling on you. And my favorite thing is it busts this hole, and they could all continue to chase him.
They just give up.
And they just stop. Because they're like,
well, I made that note of the action sequences in this are not as cool as they think they are. But that stood out to me.
But were they cool then? I totally agree with you. I have a very similar note. Like, do we think they were cool then?
I don't know, because that the car scene where they're driving through the whole gang lined on either side, and they're doing about 6 miles per hour.
I was going to say, it's the slowest car chase.
Somebody jumps on the hood and like kind of just gently falls off, and it's just, and then they get to that wall, and Janelle was sitting next to me, and I was like, well, where are they gonna go now? Like they're gonna have to get out and fight. And then like you said, they just drive through it, and she goes, oh, okay, well that was easily solved.
Yeah,
not
it was
such
like
a dead end after all.
And they're like beating it with sticks, but not even that hard, and it just like I wanted it to be faster. I wanted it to move quicker at the very least if there's going to be this chase. And I just was like, there was like, it looks more hardcore than it's going to be, because as you come in onto Broadway, there's a head on a pike, and you're like, oh, it's about to go down.
Yeah.
And then it does not go down. Like I thought there was going to be more to that, and I wanted it to be faster. And the car is like flailing all over the place. And I'm like, is Kurt Russell a bad driver, or is the car shitty? Like we have no control over the situation. And then all of a sudden he's flipped a bitch and he's backing up, and it just, it was very weird, and it was very oddly paced. It was.
I also didn't like I did like the people coming up through the sewers and like breaking through the floors and stuff. I thought that reminded me of Thriller. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Giving zombie energy a little bit.
I didn't understand why the gang originally comes down the alley. He sees them. He runs away. As he's walking away, they run past him. Some of the people coming out of the sewers just pass him up like they don't give a shit.
They just like don't even notice him or think about him.
Yeah,
I wonder if
and then he goes into the diner, and I'm like, okay, I guess he's safe. But then they come up and eat the girl, presumably, and then he fights his way out, but like that makes no sense. But then when he's like running away from them and he's upstairs, he shoots a hole, like a circle in the wall to jump through it, and then when he comes out the other end, it's the thinnest fucking, like I've had apartment walls that are that same size,
Yeah, and there's a bunch of that later too, where there's like he stomps. Gosh, what scene is it? It's something warehousey later where he's like stomping through the floor. Remember? And there's like holes, and they like fall through the floor at some point too. And he's like, and you look at you see the actual floor material, and it's teeny tiny. It's very thin. And I think a lot of it's budget issues. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, but I feel like we could have done something more practical, or even left some of those effects
Yeah,
out.
like he didn't need to shoot holes in the wall. He could have just jumped through the wall. You know, if it's
Yeah.
that thin, I don't know.
Yeah. That made me remember though. I did look up the budget for Escape from LA, by the way. It was 50 million versus the
Oh,
6 million for this one. But guess how much it made?
I would put it 78.
42.
Oh
It
no.
lost money.
I mean,
So
to
I
be
don't
fair though,
know.
at that point in his career, Kurt Russell wasn't the draw that he was 15 years prior,
No,
right? Like I can't remember
it's
what he was doing
true.
in the early 90s.
I feel like wasn't he doing that oh my god, I looked at this earlier too when I was looking him up. It was that it was like the island boat trip family kind of campy movie. Do you know what I'm
Oh
talking
yeah.
about?
God.
What was
Captain
that
something?
called? Yes, it was like Captain something. Captain Ron.
Ron.
Captain
Okay,
Ron.
okay.
But like that's the kind of shit he was doing around this time. He had done, I will say, before Escape from LA, he did Tombstone, which was bomb.
That was, yeah, when was that? 90.
93. Escape
Okay.
from LA was 96.
Okay. Probably word of mouth just didn't carry it very far. And it's like 15 years later, an action sequel just seemed. I mean, I think Blade Runner 2049 is the exception to the rule, but I don't know how many other action sequels have come out over 5 years past the original and been great. But
I have a hot take on Blade Runner 2049. Well, actually, both of them. I fell asleep watching both of them, both times that I tried. I have seen Blade Runner all the way through the first one, and it was just painfully slow to me at the time. I mean, I didn't see it obviously when it came out, but then I tried again and it still was so slow. And then I saw Blade Runner 2049 in theaters and I was like fucking amped. I was like, oh, it looks so good. It's going to be really great. I could not keep my eyes open. I was like, this is not, I don't know if I need to give it another try. I hear people love it. I don't know. I did not love it. I did not love it on a
that's
first
fair.
watch.
I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, but I liked Blade Runner 2049 for the visual experience. I just thought it looked awesome.
It looks very pretty.
And the story was
Yeah.
fine. I don't know what else I was expecting out of it, but it was fun to look at.
Yeah. I feel like the fact that we just talked about 4 different movies in a 2-minute span says how
What are
much
we
we want to
covering
talk
today?
about
Yeah.
this movie. I don't have a lot else to add other than there's a few other things that I think don't play well, which is they find Harold, aka Brain, later, who's very touchy about being called Harold. And he figures out in like 3 seconds flat that the plane that Snake came in on has to be on top of the World Trade Center because in all of Manhattan, that's clearly the only tall building that it could be on, and goes and finds it and tries to take off with the president once they've retrieved him. And it flies off the side of the building. Another one that is so poor, like a really bad effect. It was really, really
It looks
bad.
like one of those model airplanes you would get as a kid, and they just threw it and like recorded it from below and just had it fall at a camera. And they were like, yeah, this works.
Yeah. And there's also like you can't have an 80s action film without like a weird dystopian ring fight. So there's that in the abandoned Grand Central,
That kind of comes out of it. Like I said, this just feels it's like a string of what action set pieces.
Of tropes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And they have that, and it's like a big Russian guy, of course. And I remember one of the things I thought was funny to read was that Kurt Russell was like actually getting his ass beat by this guy in this ring. And
He was a former
like,
professional wrestler, so he was
right.
fighting, quote unquote, people for a living.
He was fighting, and he, I guess, didn't know how to pull back a little. So Kurt Russell finally,
which you would think a wrestler would know how to do that. Like that's their job, is to not hurt the other person to make it look real, though, right?
Right. I mean, I don't know. You know more than me. I would assume so. But I guess he wasn't letting up. And he also was like throwing trash can pieces at him, and they're like hitting each other with sticks. But it got bad enough that Kurt Russell tapped him on the groin and told him to chill out. He was like, you need to take it down a notch.
He did it like that with like the one finger, just like
I don't know. Sometimes does that hurt worse?
Or do you think it was like
I don't know
what you would do? Well, not you, but what we would do to our friends in college, where it's like a little.
I don't know what hurts worse, like a little, like a tap, or like a big
backhanded whack of like stop.
Backhanded whack.
Yeah, you're hurting me.
I don't know. Maybe he wanted to be gentle, a little bit more gentle to be professional. I don't know. Maybe it was a warning shot across the bow. I don't know. It was something that he was like, cool the fuck down, my guy. Otherwise, I'm like, did you really just threaten a wrestler, like a really huge wrestler guy, Kurt Russell? But I get it. You're getting your ass beat for a while. You're kind of over it at that point. But yeah, so they have that action sequence, the little ring fight, which feels completely out of place and pointless.
Yeah.
And then they have the like shootout fight scene. And I don't know if you caught this. There was this one shot that gets 3 people with 1 bullet. Did you see that?
I did not see that, but I want to see it now.
And both Skylar and I were like, how did that just get 3 guys just went down? There was 1 shot. How did 3 guys just go down in different areas of the shot? You know what I mean? Like, there's no like pew, 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 ricochet. They just all go down. I don't know. I was just so over it by this point. I was like, what is happening? This is so ridiculous.
Yeah, this I feel like I've said this so many times during Action April when we're recalling other movies that we've done, but I don't love when punches in movies look fake, and when it's just like the fights in this, the hand-to-hand stuff is like laughable, where he's just like and like it's very 80s. So I didn't love that. What I did love is when we eventually get to where there are stakes. I think when they escape from that area of the Dukes and they're getting chased, when we finally get like the deaths of some of the main characters, I thought that sequence with Cabby, Brain, and Maggie all eating it was pretty well done, all things considered.
That was good. The Maggie shot was shot after the fact, which I think is really, it's a good decision because it does, like, it lands well and it makes it clear that she has actually died. But that was because kid J.J. Abrams saw an early screening of the film and told John Carpenter that it's not clear that she's dead. So
you're talking about just the last shot. I thought you meant that they hadn't decided to kill her, but then they
no, just the last shot, the car bit where she's under the car, kind of all covered in blood. They shot that in their garage because they're married, in their garage with their car to show that she was actually dead, because J.J. Abrams was like, "It's a great movie and I love it, but it's not clear."
Well, J.J. Abrams produced Lost, right? So he doesn't get to fucking speak about not answering questions.
He was also 15 at the time, to be fair. So we can't hold his future work against him. But, it's a good call out. I think it played well. It was a good cut. But yeah, that whole sequence is pretty well done. I just don't like it feels like all of a sudden Cabby shows up, conveniently shows up after having vanished for a hot minute, drives them where they need to go. And I just keep coming back to, like, I just think the president casting is so shitty. Like, it doesn't fit to me. He's just such an annoying little bitch. And then he goes and asks him, Kurt Russell goes and asks him at the end, he's like, whatever you want, what is it I can do for you? Whatever you want. And instead of like reiterating this pardon or being like, I want $1 million, like, I don't know, something interesting, he's like, I just want to know how you feel about that. Like, all these people died to save you. And like, just, he's doing the voice again. He's like really leaning into the voice. And basically the president's like, I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks. Like, but I got to be on air in a couple minutes. So
yeah, he's like, he flips that switch so easily too. Cause let's not forget the president has a body count in this. He kills the dude. Yeah. And
which is like the one moment that you're finally like, okay, he did something great.
Yeah. And I thought that was going to stick of, we broke the president. Like, he's lost his marbles. He's yelling and shooting.
Yeah.
And then 2 seconds later, we cut to his next shot and he's getting shaved and he's talking like nothing happened. And that just felt silly to me.
Yeah. And I'm like, we can't, also, it could be the one thing to make him likable at the end. Like, to make him, okay, he's been through it. He had to kill a guy. He gets what war is like now, whatever you want to say. And yeah, none of that happens. It's so unsatisfying. He just walks off, and Hawk's like leaning against the wall. Sorry, Van Cleef, you were hurt. I get it. But he's like leaning against the wall, just chilling. And he like, he asked him to be like his deputy or something like that. He like wants him to come work with him again. And you're just like,
you threatened to blow my head up. Yeah.
You threatened to blow my head off. Like, why do you think I'm going to come work for you? And he just walks off and tears up the tape.
Well, but he says, like, okay, goodbye, Snake, or whatever he says. And he's like, the name's Plissken. And it's like, he lost his Snake privileges because he was such a jerk this whole time. So he can't even call him Snake anymore.
That's true.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about it that way.
Says, like,
I mean, I remember hearing it, but I didn't.
Call me Snake. And then he flips it at the end.
He flips it.
That might be the best thing in the whole script, honestly.
Do we think that's because he's punishing him and he's like, you lost your Snake privileges? Or do you think it's like, I have been reborn as Plissken, like the good guy, not the
I
criminal
don't think
snake.
he's really turned over any new leaves throughout this journey. I think he's.
But are we trying to say that he has? Like, I agree with you, but I'm just wondering if the intent is that
I think he's
a whole new
throwing
person because he
shade
rescued the
at
president.
guy that had the little head explodey things in his neck.
It's true. We shouldn't try to give this much depth, let's be honest.
Yeah. And then he does the most I don't give a fuck thing ever, middle schooler Paul Rudd in Wet Hot American Summer, and he just destroys the tape that could have prevented a world war. He's like, I don't care about anything.
I know.
I don't care if the war ends.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was just like, what did you have against the tape? Like, yes, the president sucks, don't get me wrong, but we're going to just not give a shit about this world war averting tape that should be shared. And then you're going to like play the prank and this song is going to play on TV instead, Cabby's favorite song. And you're just like, really? Really? That is a very middle school prank.
They should have had when he takes out the tape and rips it up. They should have had the Jackass theme song play, like bam, 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 and then go to the credits. Like,
just go straight to the credits. Fuck the press conference. We don't need any of that. We just want the song. Well, I don't know. All that to say, that's how it ends. And apparently there's a sequel, and I don't personally need one. It's funny though, because I remember when I was a kid thinking this was good. Like I had it in my head as it was like a good time, but I must have not been paying much attention because I definitely did not enjoy this round.
Yeah, I feel like we're half and half on the things that we've watched that we liked when we were kids. And usually sometimes you end up being like, yeah, this is still pretty enjoyable. Or it's like, I get that this isn't as good as I thought it was, but it's still fun for me to watch. But it still holds up. Or I feel like this one, it's sounding like to you anyway, that this one just wasn't actually that much fun this time around.
It didn't hold up. Yeah, I just kind of kept tearing it down. I don't know. Sometimes you're also not in you're not in the right headspace either. And I don't know if maybe that was it, where I was just like, I came in with like, I had no grace for all the little mistakes and shit that made no sense. It just kept bugging me. And I also don't think it helps that they piled on, to be fair. If it was like a handful of things, or maybe even just a couple of things, that you could sort of dismiss them and have like the suspension of disbelief a little bit. But there were just so many things that I thought I had no information about, or I thought that they made no sense. And the action, to your point about the sequences later, is just not good enough to make it still entertaining at the end of the day. That's the piece where I'm like, the action didn't blow me away, The
only sequences I remember, and it wasn't even action. I'll remember the people coming up out of the sewers. Thought that was cool.
Yep.
And the ring fight, the baseball bat to the head with the nail.
Yeah.
That'll stick with me. But aside from that, I'm not going to remember any of the action sequences in this film.
Yeah. Cause where are they? I don't know. There's not much. I'm going to remember the grease roll up better than the rest of it, to be honest, with the chandeliers. So anyway.
Do you think the movie would have been better with who the execs originally wanted in the lead role, which is Tommy Lee Jones? Do you think his gravitas would have added to the role of Snake?
No, because I love Tommy Lee Jones. Don't get me wrong. Like I think that would have been a really interesting, different energy. I don't think it could have changed the plot, like the writing and the plot, which is like meh. And unless you again make a bunch of these action sequences better, then it's just a better actor in a shitty action sequence. And like imagine him in the car. Like, is he the car scene doesn't get better because Tommy Lee Jones is driving if it's still 6 miles per hour and nothing happens.
True. Well, I feel like though, for the amount that we've said that, Kurt Russell showed up and put on an eye patch and John Carpenter was like, fuck it, I don't care. I feel like he probably could have just let Tommy Lee Jones improvise or just had him play himself. Like just Tommy Lee Jones as himself as Snake. Hell yeah.
It's funny you say that because he didn't hire not just Tommy Lee Jones, but there were a few other considerations that he didn't want to hire because he didn't want them to take over on set and basically take control of the film as a more experienced actor. He wanted a less experienced actor like Kurt Russell. But yeah, to your point, would that have made more of a difference if that actor's like, hey, this doesn't feel like an intense enough sequence, or you need to do more here? But it seemed like John Carpenter at this stage was still a little insecure in his own ability to run a set. And so he didn't want a more tenured actor like that. But yeah, maybe it would have made a difference. Maybe it would have helped him make a better film.
I wonder what other costume choices Kurt Russell could have gotten away with. Like, I think I should wear pink pants. I think Snake would wear pink pants. And he's like, okay, sure.
I know, like, what could he have talked him into is really... But can you imagine Tommy Lee Jones, though, in that getup that Kurt Russell is wearing? Like, I don't know if
I feel like it'd be better if they didn't even call him Snake Plissken. They're like, no, the hero of the story is Tommy Lee Jones.
It's Tommy Lee Jones.
He's like, listen here, Slick.
I buy that.
Have to give us the president back right now. You know.
Everybody's like, okay. I mean, fair. We listen to Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, I don't know. What the things that could have happened, that could have been. All that to say, what's your rating?
Oh man, not good, honestly.
Yeah.
I can give it a little bit of credit for coming out 43 years ago, but it can't imagine holds up well to most people, especially that first act is just a bunch to get through. And then by the time the action starts, it's not even that action packed.
I know. I wanted more
there's
action.
better movies from the same era that are better than this. So I don't know. I'd give it like maybe a 5, honestly.
Yeah, I was kind of hovering in my head around a 5-ish. And yeah, I just wanted more action. This is Action April, damn it. Like, I was ready for some action. And I've been having such a good time with all these other action movies. And this was not as fun to me. So yeah, I think probably a solid 5. I don't know if you loved this. Let us know why. There's people out here loved this. And I want to know, is it nostalgia? Or is it that you watch it right now cold and you love it? And if so, why? Because I would be surprised. I'd be surprised. Yeah.
They're out there, I bet.
They are. All right. Well, thanks for joining, fam, while we just bitched about this movie for basically an hour. Come back next week to get to our 90s entry, just by the skin of its teeth, The Boondock Saints, which
we're not doing The Matrix.
We're not, because, we don't always need to do the mainstream stuff, but also I fucking love the Boondock Saints. It's
same.
A great time.
It's come up organically probably 4 times on the pod, and I was shocked when I heard that you really, really enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, we need to do this soon.
I'm surprised that you were shocked that I enjoy it. I don't know. I love action. Like, what is what's my stereotype? Do I not feel like I would love
spoiler,
an action film?
we already recorded the episode, so, and I think we might talk about this on there, but I always assumed this was a very bro-y movie, so I was shocked to hear a woman who was like, I really love the Boondock Saints,
I especially around the time that these things came out, I loved a bro-y movie. I loved The Crow, which is like gives similar energy. I love The Matrix.
Dude, Where's My Car? Big fan of that one.
I was super not. We're not. That's not what I meant. I was just kidding. But anyways, all that to say, we love the Boondock Saints. So come listen to that one if you want to hear us just rave about it for an hour and maybe cancel this one out.
90 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. We had to cancel this one out, and we just didn't know that then. Now we know. It was all a good thing. But anyway, in the meantime,
follow us on our socials, typically Instagram, also TikTok. And we drink and we watch things. You can also see the video portion of this podcast on Spotify, or you can see it on YouTube, same name. Mm-hmm. And you can always email us. We drink and we watch things pod@gmail.com. Any thoughts, ideas, reactions, the question Mackenzie just asked, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Tell us all the things. We want to know who likes this movie and why. I'm very curious. And I will check the email. Don't worry.
Mackenzie will check.
I will check. But, for now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.